Welcome, audience. We've got a very special podcast today where we have an esteemed guest, Dr. Kenyon Bonner, who is the Vice Provost and Dean of Students at the University of Pittsburgh. He's going to give us a bunch of information, and we're going to talk to him for about an hour here and see if we can't give you guys some insight. Dr. Bonner, thank you. This is amazing. It's not every day you get to talk to the Dean of Student Affairs, so thank you very much for coming.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. So again, guys, Dave Kozak alongside Joe Kerins. You've got an important job right now. You were kind of thrust into some difficulties, I would say, probably in March. How has the transition to COVID management been for you?
It's been a big challenge, I think, for everyone across the country in higher education. You know, at least in the realm that I work. We had to make some very quick decisions in March to a crisis that none of us had experience with. You know, the last pandemic was 100 years ago. So there was a lot of kind of realizing that this is a true crisis where there aren't many answers. And we sort of took the approach that we would accept that we would be making things up as we went along. That we would try to make the best decision with the information that we had in the moment and do that all in the interest of what's the most what's the safest thing for our community, students, faculty, and staff. And so keeping safety as our top priority, I think that guided a lot of our decisions early on and will continue to guide them. But it's been challenging. I think it's been another transition to work in an environment where there is not a lot of certainty, that the circumstances change frequently, and there's a lot of innovation that goes along with that, and really relying on other folks within the organization to help make some of these decisions and figure out how to solve some of these problems.
And I think, you know, to add to the innovation, you know, Pitt as a school is an innovative institution in itself, but, you know, dealing in times like this, there is no roadmap for this, you know, and as the Dean of Student Affairs, you've got to basically create the roadmap, right?
Yeah, I do. And it's done with a team. But I think that, to your point, one of the first things I talked to my staff about was the fact that there are two types of emergencies. There's the crisis that we are used to managing. We have a sort of a rule book, a playbook. You know, when there's a fire, it's a catastrophic event, but we kind of know how to manage that, right? Mm-hmm. We're used to it. It happens frequently, unfortunately. But a pandemic is something that's very new, and there aren't a lot of answers. And so, yeah, there's a lot of decision making, figuring things out on the fly. But I think the most important thing was to acknowledge that from the beginning. Yeah. To put people's mindset in the right frame to say, if you're expecting us to have answers to all these questions and you're expecting there to be a rule book, there is none. And so I think with that transparency, people started to understand and be more comfortable that there were a lot of unknowns, and that they trusted us more because we were being honest that, you know, we actually don't know how to do this. We'll figure it out, but there is no rule book that will allow us to do that immediately. So I think that helped a lot with the culture and helped people feel more engaged with this process.
And have you had resources that you could rely on in your decision making, and who do you turn to, you know, whether it's the state governments? How have you guys dealt with the communication?
Yeah, the communication is obviously we rely first and foremost on information from our public health experts, whether that's the CDC, the state health system, the county, our own experts at Pitt, which is a great resource to have. So that really starts to develop what we can do and cannot do. And then I think it's a lot of just engaging the folks within Pitt, faculty, staff, and students. Everything that we're doing will impact everyone. And so making sure that we have all those voices around the table and listen to those voices has really helped inform, I think, the process. And I think that's what a lot of universities are doing across the country, is engaging all of those stakeholders.
Yeah, and you know, you make a great point, because Pitt does have the luxury of UPMC. You got some of the best and brightest medical minds right there in Pittsburgh to kind of help guide. So I think that's an amazing resource that you're able to tap into that not all schools are.
Right. Yeah, we're very lucky, to have UPMC in addition to our medical school, our School of Public Health. Yeah, so there are lots of benefits that we have as a world-class research institution that we're definitely leveraging.
So on the same note, right, there's some civil unrest in society right now, which again, I think falls right under your purview where, you're dealt COVID and now we're dealt with a real tough spot from a country and there's a lot of people that are unhappy with things. It's bad enough to deal with one crisis, but you're really, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to have to deal with both sides of that, right? Not only coronavirus, but the kind of the nature of what's going on.
Yeah, it's I was joking to someone that when 2021 comes in on New Year's, I'm gonna turn back to 2020, and I have some choice words for it. It's not been a good year. But no, you're right. I think there's a dynamic this year where not only are we dealing with a pandemic, but racial injustice is a major issue in our country. It has been for centuries, and I think the recent tragedies this summer, particularly with the murder of George Floyd, just brought all of that to the surface, and people have basically said that they're tired and we need to do something to make a difference in the country, and it has to be done immediately. And so I think our students are no different. We're a microcosm of the world and society. And so our students have rightfully voiced their concerns about what we can do as an institution, as well as what we can do as a country. And so that dynamic, we've been engaged in those conversations and discussions and action all summer, which has been a great thing. It's been helpful actually to be able to engage with students in this virtual world, where I think in previous summers it would have been a little bit more difficult. But that is a dynamic for the fall, that we're coming back into campus with this other crisis that we're managing in our country, the pandemic, and then we're entering an election cycle season that will be no less contentious than the one in 2016. So there's a lot going on college campuses.
And I've read your Attraction, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Action Plan, and it's an impressive document that you and your team have put together. One question I think that I have as a parent, I have 4 children myself, and there's a lot of violence happening right now, and I don't think anybody wants the violence. Everybody understands the protest and the nature of peaceful protest. What are you guys doing in that action plan to kind of eliminate the violence, but have the voices heard?
Yeah, it's so I think with our students, our approach has always been to our students we talk about civil discourse, we talk about exercising their rights, and we talk about ways to constructively affect change in society. So I'm not concerned that our students particularly have any intentions to be violent. I think we've always supported their right to express themselves, to protest, to demonstrate. Our job, I think, as student affairs professionals as a university, is to give them here are the constraints, here are the rules and the laws, and here are some things that you can do to protect yourself. And if your goal is to raise attention, if your goal is to disrupt, here are ways that you can do that constructively. We're also very clear with students that, if your goal is to get arrested, which most times is not, here are the consequences of that. So I'm not concerned with our students. I think with any situation in which our students are engaged with the broader community, it's just making them aware that not everyone has the same interests or goals. And there are people who will come into a peaceful demonstration or where people are peaceably assembled, and their intentions will be very different, and to be mindful of that and to remove yourself from situations in which you will be harmed and others will be harmed. So I think college students on balance are pretty level-headed and understand that they're here to get an education, and they can do that while also exercising their rights. And we've been very clear as to what our expectations are on campus and for our students' behavior off campus. So that's not one of my concerns, but we are mindful of it, and we are educating them so that they're aware as they engage outside of the Pitt community.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point you make, which is consequences. I mean, I teach my kids 8 and under, and I have 4 of them. Everything has a consequence. Hey, the stove's hot. If you don't believe me, touch it. There's going to be a consequence, and it's going to be a burnt finger, And I think you guys are doing the right thing by saying, guys, it's okay to speak. It's okay to exercise your rights, but do it in a manner that you can be proud of, that doesn't end up with massive consequences and maybe jeopardizing your future.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, that's been my experience with our students. mean, students will push the envelope, and they should. I mean, this is a college environment, but they have not been violent or destructive on balance. So I think this is a good opportunity for them to engage and feel like they have some way to make a difference in the country. And I think their voice is going to be really important as we continue to work on these issues.
Yeah, and again, I love to hear that you guys are on the forefront. You're out in front of it. You've been spending the summer working on it. And I think, one of the concerns we hear from our client side, and I don't know how much you know about elite collegiate planning and what we do, but we try and help parents and kids make sound decisions, both financially and academically, into the colleges they go to. And there are a lot of parents out there right now that are very concerned sending their kids away from home, not knowing how the government is going to interact, how the school is going to interact, whether there's going to be peace and civility. I think one of the greatest freedoms we have in this country is the ability to debate, right? We can have differing opinions, but we can talk it out and try and come to some middle ground. And that in the political spectrum seems to have been lost. And one of the things that we try and instruct our parents is, like, get to the bottom of the situation, try and have that conversation to a deep extent. And I assume, and you can elaborate on this, but I'm assuming there is debate on campus and that it is civil and that people are trying to make their points heard. Do you guys?
Yeah, absolutely.
Platform?
Absolutely. I mean, I think in college is probably the best place to learn how to do that. I mean, we're a university environment, and so you're supposed to come to college to hear different perspectives. That's where knowledge is. That's where you develop understanding. That's where we create new knowledge. And you don't really learn unless you're put in a situation where you're acquiring new knowledge and you hear different perspectives and you're challenging your own assumptions and beliefs. So that is fundamentally what we do. That's what our faculty are here for. That's what the research is for. And that's the environment we try to provide. And that's not always comfortable. It should never be violent, though. And we should always respect and treat people with dignity. And so we do talk about that. That's in our core values. It's in our Pitt promise, our commitment to civility. But there's tension oftentimes between that mission of creating this environment where people learn and disagree and hear new information, and creating an inclusive environment where people feel like they belong. And sometimes those feel like they're at odds. And the challenge that colleges have is trying to balance that. We want you to be here to hear different perspectives and people to be able to express different perspectives, but we also want people to feel welcome. And so sometimes, it's a part of how do you do that when you're not used to doing that. So my advice to parents would be, obviously students are 17, 18 now. It's still not too late to start having that practice at home. I started with my children early on, what are your thoughts? Here's my perspective. I disagree with you. It's okay to disagree, to agree to disagree. So I think that conversation should happen before they get to college, so that when they get to school, it's not the first time they're hearing opposing points of views. So it's good to expose students to those perspectives before they get to school, so they have some sense of the ability to process it and think and reflect. So when they get to school, they're better prepared for these conversations. Do you think some of that should come at the high school level? I mean, I know there are kids that do exercise debate, but I feel like in high school, we're not, it seems right now that they're not encouraging that debate as much as when I went to high school. I went to a private school and it was constant debate. It was that academia, Yeah. I can't speak to how well they're doing. I know my kids in their school district, they have courses, at least in high school, where they're having these discussions. Of course, that's where, it shouldn't begin in college. So yeah. The more we can do, even in elementary school at the appropriate levels, middle school and high school, to practice makes perfect, right? So like anything in life, if you practice engaging in dialogue and debate, you become better at it. You become more aware of where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are. You become more informed. So I would say as soon as we can start doing that with young people at the appropriate level, and this is what educators are, that's what their expertise is, the better they'll be prepared as adults to have these types of conversations, because you can't avoid them.
Yeah. We talked about some of the challenges you guys are facing now. In your role, what do you think is, the greatest responsibility that you have, and how do you go about fulfilling those responsibilities?
Wow, in my role, that's a great question. The greatest responsibility. I think maybe I'll speak in, so I think by definition as Dean of Students, I have to balance being a voice for our students to my colleagues in the faculty side of the university and the administrative side. And the only way that I can do that is that I continually engage with our students, that I have an ear to the streets per se. I listen. I'm in the spaces where they are. And then my team, I can't do this alone. My team in student affairs are informing me of like what's on students' minds, where I need to show up, who I need to talk to, and then making myself accessible. So as a dean of students, I'm like that liaison. Students have a very powerful voice and they have opportunities, but sometimes it helps for me to be able to interpret and advocate on some of these issues that maybe there's a gap in understanding or gap in communication or connectivity. So I think to the extent that I can balance and manage that role to be that advocate for students, while also on the other end, educating and informing students on how a process might work or developing an understanding of why something exists and doesn't exist, talk about expectations. So it's a very tricky role. I'm playing both roles all the time. It's not just about doing everything the students say because they're not always right. Sometimes they're misinformed. And so at those points, I'm a teacher and I'm saying, okay, I hear you, but consider this, or thank you for that perspective, but the answer is no. But at the same time, I do that with administration to say, okay, this is what we've been used to doing. This is part of our sort of process, but I don't think it's a good process because it doesn't support and help students. And so I have to push on both sides at times. And that's the tricky part of the role of being dean of students.
Yeah, I would imagine that puts you in the middle of some pretty contentious situations at times. And you know, the level head needs to prevail for sure. So I don't know. I don't know that in the current environment that I envy your position. I respect it tremendously, but man, there's a lot of change going on right now, and being that person in the middle, that's a huge responsibility. So I think that was probably the best answer I could imagine, that your responsibility is to make sure that the student voice is heard, but that the faculty administration, their voice is also heard, and there's some level of bringing that together. That's tremendous responsibility.
It's like sometimes I'm a convener. I just bring people together. Here are the right people. I connect people, and let's have a conversation. And that typically works all the time. But it starts with relationships. It starts with people, students generally not the first time meeting me or seeing me or knowing about me as a crisis. So I think if you're effective at being out there and at least appearing accessible, and when people connect with you, you reach out to them and you connect, it makes that role easier because you're seen as someone who truly cares, because you're not just showing up when there's a problem.
And I got to imagine that trust on both sides is paramount in you, and belief in you from the student side and from the faculty side, that trust is an absolute winner here.
It is, and I think that's typically the gap between students and the administration is the trust. I mean, any leadership, from citizens to the government, it's like if you don't have a relationship, you have all these notions as to whether or not you can trust a particular leader. And so, yeah, trust is a foundational quality. If people feel like they can trust you, then it's easier to work together, and you can get a lot of things accomplished. Without trust, it's going to be a continuous struggle on both sides.
So let's shift gears for a minute. I want to talk a little bit about your history. And, my father is a graduate of Washington Jefferson College, and you don't find many of those. So, and I went to Franklin and Marshall on the other side of the state. So, W&J has a great place in my heart. My dad went there, continued on to law school. You obviously went there. I assume you're from the Pittsburgh area. Is how you matriculated that way, or?
No, I'm from Cleveland. So
got it. Okay.
Yep, born and raised. Yep.
And you went on from there to Kent State, and then you studied at University of Pennsylvania as well. What motivated you to hit college, get a postgraduate degree, and then go ahead and get a doctorate? What was your motivation?
Wow. So I'm a first generation college student. No one in my family that I'm aware of had earned a bachelor's degree prior to me. Now, I mean, as far as my family can sort of figure out, right? And the difficulty in trying to figure out all of your family members, but in the sort of broad range of my family, I believe I was the first one to complete a bachelor's degree. Although my father had attempted college and then had to drop out after his first year. So it was really about opportunity. Like I knew I wanted to get a college degree. I wanted to get out of the house, and I wanted to be able to support myself and not struggle financially. And so the thing that really motivated me, there were two things. Seeing my father try to complete his degree while he worked. I went to school with him a couple of times at Cleveland State. And that was like, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is different, you know, but I didn't really give it serious thought. But then the show A Different World came on, which came on after the Cosby Show. And it was about Black students who had gone to a historically Black college. And the show was about just college life. And it was that show, a show created by Bill Cosby and his team, that really sparked this. You can be a college student, and this seems like something that would be interesting. And so that's when I set my targets on college, and basketball happened to be a means for paying for it because my parents couldn't afford college. And so I put the two of those together to try to get into school, and it worked. I was recruited by one school in particular, Loyola, Maryland, a Division I basketball program. And, you know, the last night of a decision, they called me and said, oh, we're going to go with the 6'10" guy. I was like 6'4.5" at the time. And so I was crushed, thought I would never go to school and play basketball. And then I remembered that there was a Black alumni from W&J, Dr. Phillips, James Phillips, who was a trustee, and he was calling me my entire senior year saying, you should consider W&J. I graduated, 40 years ago. It's a great school. And I would just, who's W&J? I've never heard of that. It's some small school. It's not D1. But when that fell through, I called him and we had a conversation, and I was like, I'm going to give it a shot. And I went to visit, fell in love with it. And I made a decision. There was another guy from Cleveland who we played against each other in high school. We played on the same AAU team. He said he was going. And so we agreed to support each other and go to this school in Western PA in Washington with like 30 Black students, 1,200 white students. And we did it. So that's how I got to W&J. It was a roundabout way, but I knew I wanted to get a college degree. And then when I went to W&J, there were really good people, faculty there who supported me and then said, when you graduate, you should go to graduate school. I was like, I want to get a job. I'm tired of being broke. They said, money will be there, but you have a potential that you're not seeing right now, but we see it. Go to graduate school. So they helped me identify Kent State as an opportunity. I applied, they accepted me. And then I fell into counseling, and then realized that I wanted to be in higher ed because I didn't want to counsel students, because I was always thinking about, well, we just did this as an institution, they would be less stressed or anxious. Who's responsible for the environment? So someone said, that's higher ed administrator, student affairs. And so that's when I decided to go into student affairs. And so that's how my career started, from that trajectory.
It's crazy. You and I share an identical story from Division I. I was recruited for a long time by William and Mary to play baseball. And I remember the day, it was February 12th, 2001. And I got the call from the assistant coach, not even the head coach. And he said, hey, basically, number one recruit was going to Clemson. He's changed his mind. He's coming to William and Mary. I was 12 on a 12-man list, and I was number 13. And the conversation started with, I've got some good news, I've got some bad news. Good news is you're on the team. Bad news is I can't offer you a scholarship, and because of that, I can't offer you admission either. You've got to go through the same channel of everybody else, but if you get into school, you're on the team. I was waitlisted. I had never been to Franklin and Marshall. I had never talked to the baseball coach there. It was a close enough school. It was one that was on the radar because of its academics. I drove out, met the coach, and fell in love with the place, and I mean, the rest of it's history. So,
yep.
And to me, that is an incredible story for multiple reasons. Number one, the motivation that inspired you to do better, to make something of yourself. the idea that every time an opportunity closed, you opened another one. You never burnt the bridge at W&J. You kept it alive, you know, and to all the alumni out there, that's a powerful story of how a trustee and alumni, just by making a phone call a couple of times, making sure that you're keeping people engaged, you know, you get a solid Division I athlete, a Division III program, it probably changed the basketball program at W&J as a result. So I think the story is amazing. And then to realize that, you know, there's some personal insight on yourself to say, hey, you know, I didn't want to be in counseling, right? That's not where I can foster real change. And then to find it good. So I love it. So what do you take? You did counseling for a while. How long were you in counseling?
So I was my program was a 2-year program.
Okay.
Master's degree. Yeah.
What do you take? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
What do you take from that experience that leads you to be such a dynamic leader today at the University of Pittsburgh?
The thing that I take from counseling is just, I think listening was really important to understand. Empathy, like how to reflect feeling.
Yeah.
And I think I do a lot. I mean, I think as a dean of students, if you really listen attentively, and you can reflect what people are saying and maybe what they're feeling, what they express, it creates a lot of trust, and that people feel heard, believe that they've been heard. And so I think that's the biggest thing. And I think ultimately, I think the principle of, you know, the goal in counseling, we're not fixing people, we're helping them help themselves. And it's just kind of being a guide or a coach through that process in most counseling sessions, philosophy. So I think I try to take that element of it in the work I do. And I think that's been really helpful in a lot of these stressful situations that I've been in within my career.
Yeah, and they're no more stressful than currently. So, well, we're talking about stress. How committed are you guys to coming back in the fall here? I mean, the only reason I asked that is because I got an announcement last night from my local school district that they're delaying until November. So everything's virtual until November 5th. Yeah.
Our plan is, I mean, we released our plan a few weeks ago, and it's a highly flexible model. So we will be open first and foremost. And we do plan to have, at this point, students in person, but it's really by choice. So the plan allows for students to say, you know what, I'm not comfortable. I want to take all my classes remote. You can do that. You can also say, you know what, I'm comfortable. I'm going to come to school and I want to be in person in the classroom. You can do that. You can also change your mind at any point throughout the semester. You can get to campus and you can say, oh, I'm no longer comfortable. Things have changed. And so you can go totally remote. And the same for the faculty. Faculty are teaching, they can be in person. But they also are expected to provide an in-class experience, meaning that they can broadcast their lecture via technology. So that's the plan right now. In terms of safety, you know, it's about de-densifying those places where people would be in person. So our residence halls have been de-densified. We don't have as many people in rooms or on floors. We also leased 3 hotels close to campus so we can spread students out. And then the classrooms, there are guidelines as to how many students you can have in a classroom and how far they have to be spaced apart. That's the plan. But, you know, as things change, the plan is flexible and it will adapt to that, all in the interest of whatever is the most safe way that we can conduct classes. You know, the worst case scenario is that all schools will go back to all online remote, or there will be this hybrid thing throughout the semester, or it may fluctuate. So it all depends on what the health experts say. And those are our weather people, the medical folks. That's the metric that we're using. If our health experts give us a forecast that allows us to continue with the plan, then that's what we'll do. If it doesn't look like that's going to be the best thing medically, then the plan will change based on that advice.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing that there's such flexibility in the plan itself. And, you know, I gotta ask you a question. Go back a year ago in your position, right? Think about what you guys have implemented at Pitt specifically over the last 6 months from this thing hitting to now. I mean, that is like a tectonic shift in education that happened like that. and you guys just rolled with the punches and pulled through it. I mean, like, kudos and credit to you guys for having that flexibility. But think about a year ago, trying to forecast this. I mean,
nope, didn't even cross. Yeah, no one saw this coming. I think when around January, I think we started to think about the impact on the United States. But yeah, last year this time, no one was thinking. I mean, we were thinking in the traditional, college, university environment. So, but I think it is a testament to how innovative and agile and how talented college campuses can be. There's a lot of expertise and there's a lot of creativity, and I think that's something that speaks to one of the values of being in this type of environment, is that you can leverage all of that talent and expertise, and you can respond to things in pretty miraculous ways.
so on a follow-up to your role in, like, kind of the Dean of Students, Student Affairs, the experience, Pitt itself, I mean, football games, the tailgates, the fun, the excitement, the energy, all that stuff comes into what you do. How do you recreate some of that in this environment? What are you guys doing differently to try and help engage students? I know a lot of people that have graduated from Pitt. I know a lot of people that have graduated from Penn State, and they bleed those schools. They live it.
Right.
And that's the experiences of being there. Are you guys doing anything specifically to kind of recreate the bloodline of the university,
That is probably our biggest challenge after just safety, is just figuring out. I mean, you go to school, most students will attend a university like Pitt because of all the things that you mentioned, just the atmosphere and the community and meeting of people, and engagement. And that is a big challenge, because a lot of that is founded on being with people together, congregated. And we will not be doing that to the extent that we have historically. And so, yeah, it's trying to figure out how to pivot and engage in that way as best as we can in the virtual world. How to inspire that type of connection within smaller communities.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not going to be the same. I think that's the realization, is that we're likely not going to have thousands of people packed shoulder to shoulder at concerts on Bigelow, or packed into an auditorium with 500 students, because it's not safe. And so that is one of my concerns, but we're still working on how do we do that in a virtual environment, and how do we create that sense of spirit and pride and community, despite the fact that we can't be together physically. It kind of helps that this isn't a new thing, that people are trying. I think people are learning how to do that over the months, but yeah, bottom line is it's not going to be the same. You're not going to feel like you feel at a typical sort of campus, and that's true for all campuses across the country. It's just, we're going to lose a lot of that because of the environment, unfortunately.
Is there a way, and this is not, I mean, anything other than ideal. Like, I look at a lot of these benefit concerts that are going on right now, where these famous artists and musicians they're at their house, or and they're broadcasting a concert for either it's COVID relief funds or things like that. I know Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, they did that golf thing, which was awesome, in the rain with Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, to raise money for this stuff. So I guess, the thought is, can you put on a big production? Obviously the money's probably there to do it. There's probably people. I think it'd be cool to lead that type of thing, because I don't know that schools are thinking about that. I think, again, I got to give you credit where credit's due. I don't know if I'd be able to have composure in a time like this, trying to guide the students of a university, so, but is there a way to kind of create some of that environment for you guys?
Oh yeah. I think virtually we are thinking of all those things. Like, we can have a major artist, performer or lecturer. It would just be virtual. It'd be live streamed, and the benefit to that is we've also talked about leveraging that and partnering with our regional campuses or other local colleges and universities to support each other in that. So yeah, all those things are the things that we're discussing. The Pitt Program Council is planning a concert in the early semester. People would just tune in virtually to watch the concert. So those things are things, lecturers, our Pitt Program Council and Black Action Society, brought a speaker in last week, virtual. So I think that's what we have to do. It's just that we won't have people in person jumping up and down on the street, but they'll be in their homes or their residence hall rooms or apartments having just as much fun with an exclusive event for Pitt students.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. What are you proudest about of Pitt, of your career? Like what is the two separate questions there? I guess the first is, what are you proudest of your career? And then what are you proudest of at being a member of the Pitt leadership?
The Pitt leadership, I would say, and this might sound, my students I'm most proud of, because I think they are pretty phenomenal people, and very active and engaged and down to earth. So Pitt, we have really bright students on our campus, but they're also down to earth. And that's the one thing I love about Pitt, that we still have that sort of Pittsburgh blue collar mentality, even though we have exceptionally talented students who could be at most universities around the world. And so they've chosen Pitt as a place that they want to learn and live. And so I really appreciate the types of students we have on our campus and how they push us, and how, for the most part, they're all down to earth people. So that's what I'm most proud of for Pitt. I'm also proud of my colleagues, that I think we're a responsive university. I work with people who care. It's hard and difficult to be, leaders at a major university. And when people don't know you, they make assumptions. But the folks that I know really do care about Pitt. The provost and the chancellor are both alumni of the university. So they have this affinity for it. They're very good people who care about students first. You don't always find that in senior leaders, that they're always mentioning that how does this impact students? And so that's the one thing. And they're very responsive to issues on campus. And the other thing I'm proud of is my team in student affairs. These are hardworking, very caring, compassionate folks who do a lot of work behind the scenes and really help support the campus life that is very valuable and really defines the student experience. Yeah, we have a great academic experience, but when students leave, the memories and the stories they tell typically don't come into the realm of, oh, I remember this great lecture this professor gave. I remember the game against Clemson, right? Yeah. I remember the concert we put on, or I remember this demonstration we were in. So I think that's great. For me, what I'm most proud of, I think, in my career, I've never lost sight of why I'm doing this work, which you can over the course of your career. I'm doing this because, as much as I love W&J, there were things about W&J that no student should have had to experience, particularly a Black student. And these weren't intentional things, but the absence of understanding what it means to bring 30 Black students into a predominantly white campus with 1,200 white students. If you don't have the support, or you don't recognize that experience will be different and can be traumatic, we struggled. I personally struggled a lot on W&J's campus. So I've never lost sight of, I don't want that to be the experience for Pitt students. The second, any student, whether they're Black or international or white, the second thing is that the great things about W&J, I haven't lost sight of. That small college feel, that community, that sense of pride, the relationships. I've tried to make this a forefront of what we do on a big campus, so that when you come to Pitt, you don't feel like it's, Texas A&M 70,000 students. You feel like, yeah, it's a mid-sized university, but I feel like it's smaller. So those are the two things that I think I'm most proud, not losing sight of my motivation and why I got into this work, and living that every day.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Pitt have a pretty cool program with Carnegie Mellon and Duquesne, where there's that ability to kind of cross-pollinate in the studies?
Yeah, you can take courses at Carnegie Mellon, other universities, which is a great feature. Like, if Pitt doesn't offer a course, you can take a course at CMU and vice versa. So there's a relationship between the universities. So on the academic side, that's a great benefit, because they're all great universities. And also on the social side, it's kind of cool to be in a community where, let's say for some reason you get tired of Pitt students, if you're a student, which I don't know how you would do that, but you can say, hey, I'm going to go over to CMU, different environment, different culture. for its vibe. And so you have that option, Duquesne. So it's cool to be around other colleges and universities for a student, because you can get into different communities and get a different taste of what it means to be on different kinds of campuses.
Yeah, and again, I think, Pittsburgh itself, right, is a smaller city compared nationally, and it has that. If you ever been to, I spent every Christmas for the first 24 years of my life in Pittsburgh. My dad's from Elwood City, PA, so I know it well. All my cousins live there, and it's got that small city like it is really an awesome place. But then to add the campus and the camaraderie of Pittsburgh behind each of these schools, I think it's incredible what they have achieved in Pittsburgh from that standpoint. The follow-up question to the things you're most proud of, what would you change if you could about Pitt?
What would I change if I could about Pitt? That's a good question. I know we're working on. Because it can be your 2021 goal. No, I know. I think some of the things I'll talk about some of the things we're working on, because we've acknowledged that we can. So, in terms of, we have a value of student wellness and well-being. And if you look at our sort of campus recreation facilities.
We broke up a little bit there.
Okay.
Give me 1 second if we can.
I think we're good.
Yeah, all right, I think we're back.
We're good. Yeah, so I mean, some of the things that we're working on, so like our campus recreation and wellness, I think we can do better in providing better facilities for our students, because it's so important. The ability for students to engage in exercise and fitness, our intramural program and club sports, and so providing facilities. So we're working on a campus recreation center, because the one that we have now is, 50, 60 years old. The facilities are not up to par for the type of university we are. So that's the commitment we've made. And that's based on student feedback to say that they weren't satisfied with the existing facilities. So that's one area. I would say housing is another one. Just providing more affordable college housing for our students. There's a residence hall experience for the traditional student. There's also a sort of off-campus upper class experience in university housing. And then there's a South Oakland experience. And, a lot of students like that vibe, but I also would like to provide more university housing, because we can control the cost and the quality for them.
Yeah. So
that's one thing that I know we are working on changing, because that's an important aspect of the experience. And then I would say, I think honestly, as an institution, as we talk about sort of racial injustice in the country, making sure that we are living up to our commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And so, there is more we can do. We've done a lot of great work in making our campus more diverse in terms of students, but we're not done. But we also need to continue to focus on increasing the diversity of our faculty and our staff to really make this a truly diverse community. And there are benefits to that to all. So I think those are areas that I wouldn't say I'm not proud of, but areas of improvement and critique. And I think we've acknowledged that we have more work to do, and it's worthy work to do. And it will benefit all of our students when we're actually able to say that this is a truly diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment.
Hey, I like the answer. Way to not say it's broken, but you're working on it. That's how you do it, right?
When you kind of talk about improvements, beyond Pitt's personal mission statement, for you, what would you say is your guiding philosophy with work, with life? What would be your personal mission statement?
Mine is this lift as I climb. And I didn't make that up. But, part of it comes from, I've had this concept my life because that's how my parents lived. And so I learned that from just watching them. But it also, as a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity, it is like a unofficial model, and there are other organizations who have adopted that model. But it's the concept of, I believe that I've been privileged. Number one, I have a college education. That's not something that everyone has, and so I've earned it, but not everyone has it. And so I think with that knowledge and understanding and that privilege, I have a responsibility to reach back and help someone else. Like, I didn't get to where I am by myself. You know, let's talk about my teachers, my parents. Let's talk about Dr. Phillips, who kept calling me to WJ. And let's talk about my friends and my professors who helped me get into school. Let's talk about my mentors over the years. And so I recognize that I'm standing on the shoulders of other people, all types of people. And so I've always lived this idea that it's my responsibility to pay it forward. And so as I'm trying to continue to climb up this mountain, which is very difficult, and sometimes you slip, fall, like, I'm always looking back to see if I can help someone else up. And I think if everybody adopts that philosophy as we're all lifting and climbing, that we're reaching back and pulling each other. And when you get to the top, whatever the top is for you, you look back, you see this chain of humanity, that people are helping each other and relying on each other. And so I talk about that openly to our students, that when you graduate from Pitt, don't just walk away and take your great degree and all of your talent and wisdom, and don't think about how you can take that, all that you've earned, all that you've received, and give back and help others. And I think you live a more fulfilled life when you're able to help other people and use what you have, particularly your privilege, to help other people in the world. And so that's really my guiding philosophy in life, is to lift as I climb, and try to get better at that every day.
Love it.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I've always said, if you have the ability, you have the responsibility, which is meaning like, hey, if I have the ability to bring people with me and to help them, then I've got the responsibility to do it at the same time. So I think that is fantastic. I've never heard it put that way. It's so succinct, but yet so powerful. I love it. That is,
Thank you.
Lift as you climb.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to get you on that one too, man. Nailed it. All right, so down to some fun questions. I know we got about 10 minutes here, and I can't appreciate your time. Best Pitt football alum, and I've got a list of them. You can tell me. I got Mike Ditka, Larry Fitzgerald, Dan Marino, Tony Dorsett, Aaron Donald, and LaShawn McCoy.
Oh, man. That's a tough list.
It's no joke.
Remember, we're closer to Philly, so your answer here.
Oh, my goodness. That's a tough one.
I know mine. I got to go Larry Fitzgerald. That guy's got hands. He doesn't drop the ball, man.
I'm going with Larry Fitzgerald. I think talent, longevity, his personality, all of these guys are great, but something about Larry Fitzgerald it just resonates with me. So I'm going with Larry Fitzgerald too.
That's my vote, 100%.
Not Ditka? No.
Listen, Ditka's like, listen, we know Ditka, but like, I think that Larry Fitzgerald's stuff on the field as well as off the field makes him the leader. And a guy that works that hard on catching footballs and has done it for so long, and he has gotten robbed by people and always brings it down. He's like you can always throw it to him.
Yeah.
He's always going to bring it in.
No,
yeah, Tony Dorsett has a space in my heart because when I was a kid, I remember him. But Larry Fitzgerald, I would edges him out in my book.
I agree, but they're all good.
They're all great football. Aaron Donald. Yeah, all of them are fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. What programs are you working on now that you're particularly dug into, that you love, that you're gonna through thick and thin, you're gonna see it through? I mean, I know the diversity initiative, the anti-racism stuff, that plan, I read it last night from start to finish. It's comprehensive, but it is a big amount of work. I mean, it's a big deal to try and bring that through. What are you most kind of, I guess, what would you like to be recognized for, you know?
Well, I think that plan is a big one. And it's not like we just started this work.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what we're doing is a better job of making it more transparent and public. And it's informed by feedback from students more so than it has been. But I'm excited about that work, actually, because I think it will do a great deal of good for the entire campus. That's the thing about these diversity. Like when the community is more anti-racist, it helps every student on our campus.
Well, it's not just Pitt. I mean, it's Pennsylvania. It's the U.S. I mean, that's it. That teaching that, and then sending, how many kids graduate from Pitt every year? Sending that message out with them to take with them. You know, lift as you climb. Like
right. Absolutely, yeah. So that's a big one. I also think that we're doing a really good job with our mental health services, our counseling center. Our director, Dr. Jay Dar, has come in and he and his team have done a phenomenal job of responding to the demands on our counseling center, and creating an environment where we're meeting students where they are and not just telling students to come find us. So I think that's a lot of great work, and we're doing that in partnership with students. And then I would say the other thing that I'm really excited about this fall, particularly just so maybe a short-term initiative that will be long-term to some extent, is just getting students engaged in the process of voting, trying to get students to register to vote and vote. We don't tell students who to vote for. That's not appropriate, but we do believe it's important for students to register and then vote at all elections. So I think that effort is really helpful. It's another way to constructively engage in the process of change, if that's where you are. And so I think those are some pretty exciting initiatives, and all of those are done in partnership with students, which makes it even more meaningful.
Yeah, I think the register to vote is awesome because, like, it's your country. You got to engage, and that's that. At the end of the day, that's the only place that the common citizen has their ability to speak their mind, right? I mean, that you can take the freedom of speech. You can do that. It doesn't mean people are going to listen. At the end of the day, vote is the one right that, makes us unique as a country, that we run it the same way. We've never changed it. You have the right to vote. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
My favorite.
No, I was going to say, and I think that the other thing is to teach students that, there's a lot of stuff that you can do at the national level, but there's a more influence you can have at the local level. So I think, not getting into this mode of, oh, it's like the national election is a Super Bowl. That's really important and people should participate. But there's also a lot of things that affect your life on a daily level, on a day-to-day basis that's local. And if you don't engage in that process, you're not going to see a lot of the benefits of being civically engaged in voting. So I think it works both ways. So we have to promote voting, but the local level, I think, is an area where students may have a gap in understanding how much that impacts their day-to-day life.
Well, and I think for the first time as a country, every local municipality, every local government, we're feeling it. Like, if you asked me 5 years ago what the county and the county and township were doing, I'd say, roads, parks, things like that. But, I'm dealing with Little League right now, and there's liability issues that the township once signed off on to use the fields. And it's for the first time, the government is so involved because of the pandemic. So I think it's a great time to push it and explain to people this is who, when you elect these officials locally, at the state level, at the federal level, those are the ones that when bad things happen, like COVID-19, they're the ones making the decisions for you. So you better take an engagement in it.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
My favorite question, bar none, most powerful book you've ever read, whether it was the best read for you, whether it was the most influential, whatever it is, your book.
I would say the autobiography of Malcolm X is the most powerful book I've read, because going into it, I had this perception of Malcolm X. And after reading the book, I had a different understanding of who he was as a leader and as a person, and how a person can evolve in their thinking and understanding of the world. And so, I think it's a great book because after it, I was more informed and more connected to sort of how a human being grows in their life and the dynamics of that. So that's probably been the most powerful book. And when my sons go to college, I always give them, my daughter's, she has like 3 years, she'll get it too. But I like, read this book. And I think it did change my perspective of more so about like how I can see myself growing and being an open-minded individual and figuring out how I make sense of the world through experiences. I think it was a powerful book for me.
Awesome. And it's funny because I expected a book on growth. I didn't realize it was going to be that book, right? But the nature of the message taken from that book is like what you are at 20 is not what you're going to be at 40. And what you are at 22, no matter where you are, that's not what you have to be at 40, right?
Right.
We get to chart our own course. We get to learn and grow. My favorite book is The Laws of Lifetime Growth. And it's kind of the same mechanism is you evolve. You evolve
Right.
what you care about. What you care about when you're 20 is not necessarily what you're going to care about with 40. You know, right now I'm focused on my kids. Well, 10 years ago, I didn't have any of them, so there's no way I could have focused on them, you know?
Right. Absolutely.
And my parents are focused on their legacy. They weren't focused on their legacy when my dad was practicing law. You know, it's just, your life does evolve. So I think that's incredible. Any final thoughts you want to give to any listeners about college, Pitt, you name it? You get an open minute here.
No, I would just say that, I mean, I think college is a great opportunity for students. It's not for everyone. And I think you know, there are many benefits to it. There are economic benefits that have been sort of talked about and studied in terms of the premium of a college education, but there are like non-economic benefits in terms of like your well-being and wellness and health and civic engagement, volunteering, charity, and just having a better sense of who you are in life, overall health, happiness. And Gallup has done a lot of studies on that. I think it's a great experience for folks. And, you know, one of the things that I like to tell students is the single most important thing you can do, and we can talk about involvement and all of that, is focus on things that you're interested in when you get to school. And there's a lot of emphasis on, well, my mom, my dad told me that I need to be a doctor, or they told me I needed to be an attorney. And then they get to school and they totally hate it because that's not who they are, right? And they're thinking about the wrong metric. The metric is not, okay, well, what's going to get me the most money in life? And so when students realign their passion, their talent, and their interest with what they're studying, they do better. They get better grades. They're happier. They end up graduating in a way that they understand better the congruence between what their talents and passions are and what they can do with that in life. And so, like, I think that's the message I try to send to students. You can force your kid all day, every day into medical school, and some of them may eventually finish it, but a lot of them will be really unhappy. A lot of them don't finish it because that's not who they are. They're actually a better writer. They may be a better psychologist, right? And so those are the conversations I have most often with students, is to just let them know it's okay to rethink about who do you want to be and what connects with that in terms of what we offer in this university environment. And we help them be the best them that they can be, and not really who they think they should be based on other people's wishes. I think that's the single most important thing that you can do when you get to school. I had to do it myself, and I think it's helped a lot of students along the way.
That's great.
That's awesome. I mean, I can't tell you when I tell, you know, the parents of, you know, sophomore in high school, and they're like, well, he's really interested in this, and I think he's going to be an engineer. I think he's going to be this, or they don't know what they want to do. And I say, that's okay. What you need to understand from a self-reflection standpoint is, what do you like? Like, and the cool thing about college is that a subject matter that is in very little or very brief in high school could be a major in college, right? So you could like one specific thing that you studied. So pay attention to the thing that makes you go to the internet and research more, right?
Right.
Because you have that, and you know, to your point about the money will follow. If you're excellent and love what you do, and you there is an apex in every career, in every organization. And if you focus on the money, you know, laws of lifetime growth, you can't focus on the money. You have to focus on what you're doing. So I think that's incredible advice. And I think that's probably the best way to end a podcast in the history of podcasts. So I thank you so much. This has been Elite College Knowledge with Dr. Kenyon Bonner from University of Pittsburgh. Your insight has been phenomenal. I appreciate the time. And we'll get this out to you so you can check it out. Thank you very much, and we're going to shut it down from there.
Okay, thanks, guys. Nice meeting you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care.